Hello, thank you for tuning in today. My name is Cody, and today we'll be covering the process of creating invoices in Construction Online. Now, to begin, we can only create invoices within a project, and we can only create invoices for estimate values or approved change order values. So, to begin, I'm going to need to go into a project that either already has an estimate in it or has some approved change orders that I need to create an invoice for. I'm going to click into this project specifically here, click into my financials tab, and then closer to the bottom of those options, you'll see invoicing here. Now, I have not generated any invoices for this project just yet. That is what we'll do right now. So to get started, all I have to do is hit create new invoice. And then I have to choose whether or not I want to generate this invoice off of that project estimate or an approved change order from this project. Now, if I choose the project estimate, I'll just hit next step. It'll take me to my invoice details. If I choose an approved change order, when I hit next step, it'll open up all of my approved change orders and I can choose which one of these I want to invoice for. Now I'm going to do off of a project estimate for this one. So I'll hit next step. And now my invoice details will populate here. So the first thing I'll need to do is choose who I'm billing this to. Now this will just populate my contact list in the drop down below, but I can always search and choose who I want this bill to go to. We'll choose Alex here. The invoice number section is not editable. This is a reference number in Construction Online. However, the title of this invoice we can customize, but it will default to invoice number and then whatever that reference number is. However, you can change this to make these invoices a little bit more unique and identifiable. The invoice date will always default to the date that we are creating this invoice for. We then have our terms that we can apply to set our due date. Now we do have 4 default terms already included in Construction Online here. You have a net 15, a net 30, a net 60, or due upon receipt. You can also customize these by hitting the gear icon and adding new ones or taking away some of these if you don't want company employees to accidentally put the wrong term options down. You also then have the ability to set the due date manually if you don't want to use the terms. Maybe I want it due at the end of the month and I didn't have an option for that. I can just change that due date manually. The status will default to open unless I go in and change it to draft. We have a notes section to include any additional information that you might need on this invoice. And then below that, we have options that will change how the cost value is displayed in the invoice. So we have the option to include the company overhead and margin. We can choose to either prorate that through the invoice if we choose to include it or add it as separate line items. Now, whatever decision we make on this very first invoice will be the settings that will be applied to all invoices going forward. And then I can also choose to include sales tax if I would like to. We'll hit next step, and that will take us to our invoice items. The one that we'll highlight first is going to be remaining total of all lines. So your invoice will always initially be based off what's remaining on the entire project. I can always leave it on remaining total of all lines, and I can uncheck every single row and say I want to do all of the total left on Division 1 General Requirements. I can make my invoice just off that category, or I can pick individual lines from different categories if I would like to, and send that over as a value that way. Now you also have the ability to do a percentage based off of each line. So I can say that we're going to do 25%. Now once I do that, the same thing will happen. It'll go ahead and default to highlighting every item that has a cost to it and apply that 25%. Now if I want to do just 25% of Division 1 General Requirements, it's the same idea as I did on the remaining total of all lines. And then finally, we have an option for custom amount for each line item. Now this one gives you a little more freedom, but it is a little bit more of a manual process than the other two. This one gives me the ability to click on a line item that I want to include on this invoice. And then I can go in and change either the percentage of this invoice or this invoice total. So maybe I want to do 50% of this line item. Now for this one, I'm just going to say we're going to do 25% of the entire estimate. And then we'll hit next step. Now there is a section for us to include attachments on this invoices. And then once I'm done, I'll hit create. And that invoice will now populate my invoice list here in the project. Now that concludes today's tutorial. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out using the live chat or by searching the knowledge base. And as always, have a fantastic day.